What's up, Bowo Pozo?
What's up, Dan by the river? How you
What's
today?
going on, man? Man, I'm good. I'm good. It's Tuesday, so it is what it is.
I'm with you, man.
How are
Uh,
you?
I've been all right. So I've just been under the weather lately. I've had a bad case of the stomach flu or whatever you want to call it over the past few days. So I'm getting over that, but I'm on the upside of it.
You know, as the old saying goes, whenever you have the stomach flu, you get really sick.
That's what they say,
That's what the I've heard that since I was a kid.
and it rhymes too, so it kind of helps you remember it.
Yeah, we call those nursery rhymes.
You're an idiot.
Well, you ready to build a bar?
Let's do it.
All right. So, what are you bringing to the table for us tonight?
So here is what I am bringing to the table for the second time because only you and I know this, but we recorded a whole series of podcasts last week and none of them recorded. So this is the second time I'm bringing this bottle to the table, but it's our first bottle of Scotch.
Okay.
And I feel like since this is episode 9, so 8 bottles of bourbon slash corn whiskey, whatever. I think it's time that we add a Scotch to the bar so we can start rounding this thing out. The one I chose to go with, for various reasons that we'll talk about tonight, but what I've chose to go with is a little bottle called Islaystorm. And it is one of my favorites. And like I said, I don't want to get into the details of it. We'll talk about that later, but that's what I'm bringing to the bar tonight.
Well, I will drink to that.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers. Okay. So, this being our very first bottle of scotch, why should this be on anyone's bar?
Well, so like I said earlier, I feel like we need to start rounding this bar out. So it can't be just a bar full of bourbon. I mean, it could be because to me, bourbon's king anyway. But if you wanted to have a bar where folks can come over and start to, taste different things, drink different things, I think we need to start rounding this off. So I decided to add a Scotch to it because even though I'm a bourbon fan and bourbon's king to me, I still enjoy a good Scotch. I enjoy I drink it neat, but I enjoy a good Scotch. So that's why I feel like we should add it to the bar.
Okay. I could agree with that. Kind of make a well rounded bar.
Yeah, it's still a whiskey, so it's not like we're getting away from the whiskey. So,
Well, who made this?
so this specific product is from a company called the Vintage Malt Whiskey Company. And so it's basically a whiskey broker. And if I understand it correctly, basically what they do is these big companies go in and buy stock from certain places and relabel it, and they may or may not do something to it to kind of give it their own touch or not, but basically they buy it and kind of get it distributed on like a global level. So that's the company that's responsible for this. They So we'll talk about this a little bit later in this episode, but it's an Islay Scotch, and so it's from the island of Islay, and there's only, I mean, there's quite a few distilleries on that island, but it's rumored that this actual the liquid in this bottle is actually from the Bowmore distillery.
Okay.
But you know, a lot of the Islay distilleries, kind of what they're known for, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but what they're known for is the real peaty scotches. And so that's the reason I chose this, is it's a real peaty scotch, and I'm a huge fan of that.
You like Pete?
I like Pete's.
Yeah. Pete's
We
are
have an
good.
Uncle Pete. Did you know that?
Yeah, I loved him. He tasted good too. Um, what's the mash bill for this?
Idiot. So this mash bill, this is a single malt Scotch whiskey. So basically, this is 100% malted barley. And that's my answer.
Okay. Uh, okay. So, what is the difference in Scotch and bourbon, other than Scotch Scotland?
So, like, I had somebody ask me the other day, what's the difference in whiskey and bourbon? And whiskey is a catch-all phrase. Bourbon has a set of specific guidelines that make it bourbon. And Scotch is the same way. So for bourbon, it has to be 51% corn. It has to be made in America. It has to be aged in charred oak containers. It has to be, it's a set of rules that identify it as bourbon. Scotch is the same way. So it's there are a set of rules, and I won't go over them all because I really don't know them all. But like for instance, it has to be made in Scotland, and so that's the difference in bourbon and Scotch, and mostly I'm not sure this is a definitive. Well, it kind of is a definitive, but the mash bill is going to be different. So for bourbon, it's 51% corn. The rest is made up of flavoring grains like wheat or rye, and a little barley at the end to help kind of convert the sugars over and that adds a little flavor too. This is 100% malted barley, so the flavor you get, the graininess flavor that you get, is strictly from there, and so that's kind of the difference. I know I beat around the bush, but
No, I enjoyed that. I mean, it's nice because a lot of the folks that listen to this, they don't. Well, they probably know this by now, but not only is there a difference in really bourbon and whiskey, but the difference is in bourbon and Scotch, because just like bourbon has its own set of laws,
yeah.
American government laws, Scotch would have their same ones.
Mm-hmm.
So what is Islay?
So like I mentioned before, Islay is a island in Scotland, and it's when you think of Scotch, there are five regions for Scotch, and I'm going to look at some notes when I say this, but you have Campbelltown, Highland, Islay, Lowland, and Speyside, and each of these different regions give you different characteristics. So, for instance, Campbelltown whiskeys are varied. They're full. They're kind of full flavored. Hints of salt, smoke, fruit, vanilla, toffee. Highlands also kind of take in the island, so it's a huge diversity of flavor, but it's a lighter whiskey. But think of like kind of light coastal malts. Lowland whiskeys are known, they're the smooth malts, so their characteristics are like grass, honeysuckle, ginger, toffee, toast, and cinnamon, kind of those characteristics. You have Speyside, which those are like your fruity notes. So that think of things like apple, pear, honey. And then you have the Islay, which I'm going to say this term, and I don't mean it in the way it sounds, but I use the term offensive. This is the most offensive Scotch because it is the most flavor. What am I trying to say? It's got the most, like it'll impact your taste buds the most. So I tell people, much like an absinthe, if you're going to drink a Islay Scotch, a heavily peated Scotch, don't drink it first thing. If you're going to drink it if you're going to be sipping or tasting a panel of drinks, this is not the first one you need to taste. This is the last one you need to taste. And for people who don't really understand what is meant by peatiness, it's not necessarily just smoke. It is smoke, and it's campfire, and it's all the things that you would think of in those terms, but it's also very salty, very medicinal, And I say this, and when I say it, people think I'm stupid, but I say it in the best way possible. But think about like a smoky Band-Aid or something like that, and it's in a good way, in a really, really good way.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
yeah, in a good way.
yeah, but it's got the medicinal, like some people say like iodine. I've never drank iodine, so I don't know what it tastes like, but I can only imagine it would taste something like this. And if you remember, you and I stumbled upon Isla Scotches about the same time. So you and I found this campaign online, and it was for Lafroig Scotch, which is an Isla Scotch. And this tastes a lot like that, as a matter of fact. But they had a campaign several years ago called Opinions Welcome. And they basically had people from all over the globe try their scotch, and they literally put on the campaigns what people said. So some people tasted it, they liked it. Many people tasted it, they hated it. They said it tastes like an ashtray. It tasted like drinking like a log right after it had been set on fire. And for some reason, usually when I hear stuff like that, it turns me off like 100%. But for some reason, it made me really want to try that. So I bought a bottle of Lafroy. I think I sent you a sample of it, and we tried it together. And I 100% fell in love with it from the second that I tried it. I will say this is not for everybody, but if you're gonna have scotch on your bar, you at least have to have one bottle of Islay Scotch, one bottle of heavily, heavily peated Scotch, to get the full effect.
I remember whenever we were actually down at mom and dad's, and Mark was there, and we tried it together, and he said it tasted like a hospital floor. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And dude, I was thinking like, man, I'm gonna drink this, and I'm gonna be like, it's gonna taste like a burnt log. And I was like, this is single handedly one of my favorite flavors ever.
And isn't that weird
But
that the two of
it,
us fell in love with it? And of course, Mark didn't like it. It hurt his
well,
feelings.
it hurt his feelings, and to him, mayonnaise is spicy, and I get it. But that's you're right. Not every that is not for everybody, but that I love robust, big flavors, and
Yeah.
that has, so if that's what that tastes like. Um, but this says that it's a single malt Scotch, but that means single grain, right?
Not really. So ironically, the when you the single and single malt means single distillery. So the malt is what refers to as the barley. And so when you think in terms of Scotch versus bourbon, the industry itself, they do a lot of things differently in Scotland than we do over here. So if you were to come to my house and you and I were to go to Jim Beam Distillery or Four Roses Distillery, probably the person that you would be standing in line waiting to meet would be the master distiller. So that's in America, that's, for bourbon and the bourbon distilleries, that's who we kind of, I won't say idolize, but those are the rock stars of the industry, the master distillers. Over there, it's not really about the distillation, it's about the blending. So over there, you have master blenders, and their job is to do all the blending. And so when you say single malt, the single simply means it comes from one distillery. Um, the opposite of single malt Scotch would be a blended Scotch. And so that blended means it would come from different distilleries. But even the single malt, when you take from that distillery, you're going to take different barrels, and you're still going to do some blending. So it still needs a master blender to do that, if that makes sense. But what you're looking at for single malt Scotch is it's 100% malt. So the barrels are the same mash bill, 100% malted barley, but it's the same distillery. So it's a little bit tricky in the wording. So I've talked to a lot of people, and they brag that they only drink single malt Scotch because it's They don't put all that other stuff in the mash bill, and it's like, yeah, that's not what that means, but whatever. So yeah, that's what it means. It's a single distillery. The malt is what is in the mash bill.
Okay, that makes sense. So it would almost essentially be like our bottled and bond over here, so to speak. One distillery, one distiller. So yeah, that makes sense. Um, I you know I was today years old, I guess, whenever I found out that that's what single malt meant. Um, so what about the label? Tell me a little bit of the label. What was it named after? I mean, obviously it's because now the reason I'm asking this question is ancient folklore has it that when a storm
Right.
would reach the islands of Isla, that and this is back in the 1500s, they would do that. Yes, they would reach their bottles out and catch it.
Yeah. And then cap it and sell it.
Yeah.
That's what this is. It's storm water.
St- okay. So
Yeah.
they are true.
Yeah, that's true. 100%.
100%.
No, I think that the I don't know this for sure. I've tried to look it up, and believe it or not, there's not a whole lot of info on this bottle, and you will find out why in just a minute. But I would assume that the Isla Storm is just significant of the fact that, obviously Isla's the region that it comes from, but the storm is just, I mean, like I said, when you try this, you don't want this to be the first or second bottle that you try, because once you do, that's on your, like, it's on your palate the rest of the night. So, in the same way that I got a buddy right down the street that owns a distillery, and he, one of their products is absinthe, and when they do tastings, they always do absinthe last, because, if you've tried absinthe, that sticks on your palate for a while. This is the same way. So I would assume that Isla Storm just simply means that when you get ready, because a storm is about to hit your taste buds, and it's not going away anytime soon.
I like that. Does this have any other expressions?
Nope, this is it. So, um, this is it.
Okay. What would someone be expecting to pay for said bottle?
Um, so I know what your next question is gonna be, is how hard is this bottle to find. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of hit these two at the same time. So one of the main reasons I chose this bottle is because it is very flavorful. It is delicious. If you like this kind of thing, um, and for an equivalent bottle, so an equivalent bottle of Lafroig, an equivalent bottle of Lagavulin, an equivalent bottle of Bowmore from the same area is going to run you $60, $70 up. I mean, the Lafroig that we like, just the generic 10-year-old Lafroig, I can go to any liquor store around here and get it for $65, $60 maybe on sale. This bottle is $21.99. So for the price, you absolutely can't beat it. It's the same, liquid that comes from one of those distilleries. So it's the same product, but it's $21.99 for this bottle. And then I'll let you go ahead and ask your next question. I thought I was going to tie it in better, but I didn't. I did a poor job of that.
So since you did a poor job of that, how hard would this bottle be to find?
That is a good question. I didn't really expect that to come up, but that's a really good question. So that's going to be the only negative to this bottle. It is going to be relatively hard to find, and I say that only because it is made specifically for Trader Joe's. And not only just it's made for Trader Joe's, but it's only made for Trader Joe's that's in states that sell alcohol. So for instance, if you go to Tennessee and you go to Trader Joe's in Tennessee, they're not allowed to sell alcohol there. So you will not find this at Trader Joe's in Tennessee. But in Kentucky, you can buy alcohol at stores like Walmart, Kroger, those kind of things. So Trader Joe's is allowed to sell alcohol, so you can find it there. So what you're going to have to do if you want this bottle is look up what states Trader Joe is allowed to sell alcohol in and then go there. But I will say this. I know I've said this 100 times. It is worth it. It is so good. It is $21.99. It is the best $21.99 you'll spend. Even if you don't like this, to have this on the bar for your friends and family who might like it, or, maybe they never tried a heavily peated scotch, but maybe it's something that, they want to experiment with. It's totally worth having it on there for that reason.
Okay. So what should the average drinker be tasting?
So my favorite part, whenever you nose this, I mean, right off the bat, is as bold as this flavor is that I've been trying to, kind of talk about. It's that bold of a nose. I mean, when you smell it, it hits you right off the bat, and it smells like, when you smell it, at least for me, when I smell it, you think of a hospital. I mean, it's that medicinal. I mean, it's just, that's what you think of in a good way, And so right off the bat, you're hit with that same peatiness. And I think I probably failed to explain what that peatiness means. The peatiness. So when you have malted grain, what that process is very quickly is they wet the grain, let it sprout, kind of like when you think of a potato and you leave a potato in your pantry too long and you pull it out and it has those sprouts coming off of it. That's what the grain does. So the grain starts to sprout, and then they need to stop it. So they need to dry it out really quickly. So in Scotland, they have so much peat moss and this peat lying around. They pull that, put it in the furnace, and that's what they dry this stuff with. Well, that's what leaves it with this flavor, all this heavy saltiness, the seed, all this medicinal characteristic comes from that peat. And the more peat they use, the more smoke that they use, the more peaty it's gonna taste and smell. So soon as you drink it, I mean, right on the front, I mean, you just get you're blown away with the amount of peat or iodine or sea salt or medicine, whatever you want to call it. That's what hits first. And about mid palate is when the smokiness comes in. That's when you can say things like, now it tastes like, a campfire or whatever. And I say all these terms and I mean them. I know it sounds stupid, but I mean them in the best way that I can, because it is a good smoky flavor. And then towards the end of mid palate, towards your end palate, that's when you do start to taste things like vanilla, a little bit of vanilla. But to me, the finish it lasts forever. Like it's, what time is it? It's 7:00 here. When I go to bed at 10:00 tonight, this is still going to be on my back palate. That's how long. I mean, it's that offensive. And I say the word offensive, meaning it like aggressively attacks your taste buds, and it's there for the night. So again, I'll probably put this under us like I always do. I put these little smart aleck comments and stuff, but I'll probably put on there, do not drink this first, drink it last.
I like that. So I would say that you and I can agree.
Yep.
That this should be on everybody's bar.
It absolutely should be on everybody's bar, even if they don't like it.
I will drink to that.
I'll drink to that.
Well, I believe you've done a fine job covering some Scotch.
Oh, thanks.
And until next time, same bat time, same bat channel.
I wasn't frozen. I was just doing that.
Oh, I was about to seriously cuss. I was like, you gotta be freaking kidding me.
Got him! Got him!
Just kidding. Yeah, same bat Tom, same bat Shadow.
All right, homie. I love you.
Love you too, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye. If you like what you heard tonight, check us out on these social media platforms. Just search for My Journey Through the American Spirits. Also, check us out on our new website,